and welcome to a new edition of the Water Show. Kind of a bit of a special one, Björn, right? Hi, Björn.
Absolutely. Bonjour, Antoine. Yeah, here we are at beautiful France, next to the Rhine River. I mean, the Rhine River means really something between France and Germany, right?
Yeah, we're on the right side of the Rhine River.
On.
Right?
I'm not saying that it's the right side, but let's say it means something. And as you can realize from now on today, we have our show a little bit in a different way. So we will be physically together, not always on France. Maybe we go to other places as well, but no longer remote. So you don't have to stay in your basement anymore.
It's not the basement, and you know that. Actually, in the background, you cannot see it, but we can smell it. There's a wastewater treatment plant. And the reason for that is that our main topic for today is going to be around micropollutants. And we'll have a discussion around what changed or didn't change over the past years.
Absolutely.
But that's just one of the sections, because we have two more. I will have a top 3 on what will maybe change the world in desalination. And Björn has an editorial which will open the show. Can you give us a hint about that?
Well, it is a little bit like our show, right? I'm wondering why we don't discuss controversially the water topics anymore. If you go to any water show, I mean, they all have the same opinion. Isn't that boring? So that's what we want to discuss.
So we're set. I hope you're set as well. And let's go to the show.
Let's go. So today's partner we have is the company Everdrop from beautiful Zurich. They are producing filtration technology, and we will talk about that during our main section, and we will go a little bit deeper into that.
Because actually we want to open the show today with a new section we're introducing, which is Björn's editorial. Because I noticed that Björn has quite a voice in this industry, and I wanted him to share it with us every month on the Water Show. So that's what we're opening the show today with. Björn, the scene is yours.
Thank you. I'm since 15 years now in the water industry, as you are. I have been to many conferences. And one thing which really, break my heart, we don't discuss topics anymore in a controversial way, right? So I have seen, or especially over the last months, I have been to a couple of conferences, and even over the last 2 years, if I watched all the conferences remotely, you can find people on stage, you can have a beautiful topic, a good, interesting topic, but the people who talk about that is pretty boring because they have all the same opinion. Every, linear television show, we talk about that, is that you have an opinion, or let's say a topic, and then you have guests from one side and from the other. And they discuss this back and forth. Same with us, right? We started this show here because we said, okay, we have activated carbon as well, we have ozone. So which one is better? But if you go to any conference, you go on stage or you see the people on stage and they have all the same opinion. So we lost totally the potential to discuss interesting topics.
But who...
I'm not done with my editorial.
I was just wondering who you blame for that. Is it the organizer? Is it the people?
A good question. Maybe we will come to that in a minute, but because that goes even further.
Okay.
That goes even further. I mean, if you look for instance, from the marketing perspective, where are the opinion that one technology is better than the other? If I have an opinion, then I should be against something and for something, right? So, but let's say if I check, for instance, all the pump suppliers, I take all the features they have, I put them on the table, and the logo is replaceable because they have all the same opinion. And the features are more or less the same. So even the marketing is pretty, I call it nice. So we are no longer blunt. We don't have an opinion anymore. We don't say, hey, my technology is the best because of, and forget this technology because they totally screwed up. You don't have that anymore. And I give you an example. 15 years back, one of my first jobs was with the activated carbon, as you already know. By the way, for micropollutant is still the solution number 1. But that's a different topic for later. Therefore, I wanted to email to all my clients and I want to tell them that my carbon is the best. And I wanted to shoot against a Norrit at this time because they had these kind of peat carbon. And I wanted to go against these kind of peat. And everybody told me, hey, you have to be very careful. Don't say the company, don't see peat, don't see whatever which is linked to that company, that it is too aggressive. And I was thinking to myself, why? Why not? I mean, look at if you look at the advertisement, or let's say the commercials, for instance, from Coca-Cola and Pepsi, they fight all the time against each other. Coca-Cola saying Pepsi is bullshit. Same, Pepsi is saying the same about Coca-Cola. We have McDonald's against Burger King. We have BMW against Mercedes. Recently, last point, and then it's yours. Recently, there was an advertisement by BMW, right? There was a big truck by Mercedes, and on the lorry of this truck, there were all the old-timers from BMW. And the advertising was saying, even with a Mercedes, sometimes you can have some joy. And I was thinking, that's so cool. And where is that for our industry? Why are we so nice? Let's be blunt, let's be more controversial. That's what I have seen over the last weeks, months, and even years. Unfortunately.
On the surface of the things, I would agree with you. I'm just questioning one of the examples you gave, which is Burger King versus McDonald's.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's pretty relevant to my objection to what you would say. Because if you look at the history, Burger King has made a lot of advertising against McDonald's.
Exactly.
McDonald's didn't make so much against Burger King for a simple reason. McDonald's is the leader.
True.
And the leader doesn't go down in the arena to fight against the contender. The contender wants to be seen at the same level.
True.
And the same with Wendy's. Wendy's was aggressive towards Burger King. So where I'm heading with that is that I don't know if Norwich was bigger than you at the time, or
I think same level.
Same level. If you're at the same level, then I fully agree with you. It would be interesting to fight
Yes.
once against the other, because it's really from equal to equal.
Yeah.
And then you can maybe split the market with the ones looking for that very specific characteristic and the others. I mean, to me, the best example of that would be the membrane market. Whether you believe in hollow fiber or you believe in
Flat sheets.
in flat sheet, and then you can divide the market across that limit.
Exactly.
So I agree with you on that one. But the problem in that industry is that if it's highly scattered, who has the high ground, who has the low ground, and how do you decide against whom you battle?
If I take the membrane example, I mean, if you talk about hollow fibers and flat sheet, I mean, the market leaders are pretty clear. I mean, if you are now Suez, Veolia with the GE membranes, with the seaweed ones, right, you are the dominated market player. So
Then
that
you
means all the others should have at least a marketing campaign which goes directly straightforward against seaweed, right?
Yeah, but it's a bit David versus Goliath. I mean,
That doesn't matter. But if you, let's say, if you go out there and say, well, I'm safe, maybe my flux rate is a little bit better, like this and that, then you are just comparing your features, but you're not aggressively enough that you come through the noise we have all around us with your message. And that's what you have to do. We have so many messages, we get thousands of messages over the day in terms of advertisement. And you have to break through that. And you have to have an opinion. And I mean, go back to the conference things. Why don't we have different opinions on stage? I don't get that. Maybe it is, I mean, you said that. Is it because of the organizer or the guest? Well, I mean, who is bringing the people on stage? The organizer. So in principle, I should blame a little bit the organizer.
for the conference part, I think I fully agree with you, because I firmly believe that you learn much more from a controversy because it lights really the topic from all the possible angles.
You get the pros and cons for something.
Yeah, but the limit to that is who today in the water industry can be an opponent. Look at what we do. When we are taking a subject, most of the time, in depth, we agree. Then maybe on the peripherals we disagree, but then we have to decide which one of us will have to play the bad guy and go a bit more extreme.
Exactly.
And maybe you don't want to do that in a conference. Maybe you don't want to look like that on stage.
Yeah, but what is then the reason having these kind of conference? Why having 5-6 people on stage?
That's another show. We need to have a full show about-
having one topic and everybody's agreeing and giving just his example, a little bit of advertising for the company, and it's more a commercial thing. So you're sitting there and thinking, wow, that's the most boring thing I've ever been. Right? Because there's nothing happen on stage. As you said, right, I mean, sometimes maybe you have to play the devil's advocate, but even then it is interesting for the people. And that's the most important part, right? We don't do it for our sake, we do it for the people, even the conference. I mean, I remember, for instance, Sarah Filtek, Julius Glöckner, the COO, right? He said in the DWI article, and 10 years from now, all polymers are gone because we have replaced them with our ceramic membrane. That's a clear statement.
But that's a statement from one section and one technology against another. So it's not really, it's not one company against the other. It's not like Serafiltech versus Leaktech or versus Sembrain.
True, but at least it is an opinion. And that's what I'm missing. I'm missing the opinion here that someone is something for and something against.
But if that's the case, then I'm sorry, but back in my ozone years, I was actively going to customers and saying ozone is better than activated carbon. And I'm pretty sure you did the same, saying that activated carbon was better than ozone.
But saying something in front of someone is one thing. Promoting this with a bigger picture, with all the other channels you have, that's a different thing. And then I'm back a little bit with BMW and Mercedes. BMW made this picture, right, with a big truck and all the BMW on the back with all the old timers.
Okay.
And it's the same.
That was probably a campaign done by Saatchi & Saatchi, which costed millions. So do we have this kind of money to invest in marketing in the water industry?
We should have that. I mean,
should we?
Still, I mean, marketing is totally underrated. I mean, we are pretty clear with that.
What's your job again?
Exactly. And that's what I see. Even the basics are normally not really there. But let's say if you do something, then have an opinion. That's all I'm saying. And even if you don't have an opinion as company, you should have an opinion as person here in the water industry. I mean, think about LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn, right? I have seen you recently.
A couple of times, yeah.
Yeah. Even there, where is a controversial discussion on LinkedIn? Sometimes I try to be very provocative. And I'm posting something where I know, okay, maybe it is a little bit over the edge, but I do this by purpose to get a discussion. And then I look into my feed, into the comments, and I'm thinking, okay, nothing really has happened, right? Even the people who maybe does have a different opinion say, well, I do have a different opinion, but I don't want to be visible if I comment against that. And that is a little bit the behavior. We should stop that. If we have an opinion, hey, let's put it out there. It doesn't hurt, and I mean it helps us, and it helps us even more if the conference organizers say, well, I have a topic here on stage. For instance, it is micropollutants. I have activated carbon, Camvarian. I have ozone, Suez. Let's go, guys. And in the middle, there's there's a municipality from nice Basel, which we are close to, right? And then we have the discussion, and then we get the opinions, and then we get the back and forth and things like this.
So
but
you want to go back to ancient Rome, like we go down to the circus games, and two guys are fighting, and at the end of the day, then one is winning, and then the municipality is saying, no, he dies.
No, I mean, I don't want to play that game. I mean, you are, you draw the picture a little bit in a different way as I describe, right? But
that's my role.
But you know what I mean. I don't want to have these kind of Rome things, but at least I would like to have a lively discussion on stage, right? I remember 3 years ago was Industrial Water Days, I think in Frankfurt. There was a chemical industry company, I forgot the name, on top, and he said to the supplier, to the EPC contractor, hey, you shouldn't sell me the plant, you should sell me the water. Perfect topic, but it stopped, right? After he said that, the EPC didn't reply. And the entire statement, which was now on stage, which was somehow in the air, and you could do a lot out of that, disappeared from 1 minute to the other. So that's a pity.
So your conclusion here is we shall have more of an opinion in all the ways and levels and layers in the water industry. And what's your practical advice to start with that tomorrow? I
mean, it's not that you have to look for an opinion. I'm saying if you have an opinion, go out and tell the people about your opinion. Don't be shy. And there are many channels. As companies, sure, it's marketing. As person, you can use, for instance, LinkedIn. Or at least take your opinion and go to your colleague and say, well, do you know what? The last project with activated carbon worked better than the with ozone we did before. That's my opinion. And maybe the other guy is against that. And even if you have a controversial discussion at the coffee machine, it is more as we see right now on big stages with all the conferences we are attending at the moment.
I think you made a brilliant point. So thanks for that editorial, Björn.
So you're not against that. So even you don't have an opinion on that.
I have an opinion and I agree with you. So we can have opinions and still don't fight because we agree. So I agree that we should be fighting more, but not on that one because I agree.
But do you agree that next time we should find a better place where we don't have the hottest temperatures over the year, we are not next to a stinky wastewater treatment plant, and maybe not in France?
Okay.
Maybe we go to
I let him rant.
Germany or
Switzerland? The main message which I get from Björn's editorial today is don't be shy. And actually, don't be shy is also something which would define the 3 companies I present in my top 3. So in this top 3 section, I'm going to try to present to you every month something that caught my attention on a specific topic and to present 3 different ways to look at it. So what I'm looking at this month is desalination, because as you know, the word is somehow drying out, which you just said with the fact that we're in the hottest place and the driest place possible. Don't worry, this afternoon you will have some rain.
You have chosen that.
But if you look overall on the entire world, we have climate change, which is here to stay, we all know that, and we will be missing 40% of the water needed in 2030. One of the ways to look for a solution is obviously desalination. And we say obviously, but it's not that obvious because desalination has some drawbacks. It produces brines, it uses a lot of energy, it takes some space on land, it poses many questions on top of the solutions it brings. So if we look at the projections that the OECD is doing, that the UN is doing, there is this element that desalination should be doubling, tripling between now and 2030. And if you had now green hydrogen into the picture, then it's maybe multiplying by 4 or by 5. So we need more capacity, but we have a problem with the existing. So the 3 solutions I'm presenting today, it's not only companies, it's more solutions. They have interesting takes. And honestly, I have no clue if those ones will be the future. What I can say, and you will give me your opinion, is that it sounds appealing. So the first one is a company called Waterrise. And if I'm not wrong, they're from Norway. And what they do is that they leverage what they learned from oil and gas, and they take a skid, like a reverse osmosis skid, and they look at it and they think, where do we need some energy? And you need energy on the feed side to have a lot of pressure. Normally you take a pump, you add some pressure, like 60 bars, and then you produce through the reverse osmosis. And what they say is that basically 60 bars, if you go 600 meters under the sea, you have 60 bars. Sure. So why don't we use that? So they take the skid, they drop it in the ocean, put it on the bottom of the ocean, and they leverage that pressure, and actually it works. Of course, they need to pump back the water on shore or on the boat, but on the permanent side of the membranes, they have that additional pressure, which makes it more efficient. They claim it to be up to 50% more efficient than traditional desalination. They have modules which can produce 50,000 cubic meters a day. So it sounds to me like something really promising. Did you hear of the technology yet?
No, I haven't heard about that. But my question would be, what I learned is very close to here in Freiburg. I was spending my some time during my university. And there I learned if you go underground, it costs you 3, 4, 5, 6, even 10 times more as if you would be above ground. That means if you have a pipe and you go underground, it costs you much, much more. So my question here is, I mean, going 600 meters down, that means it is not very close to the coast. You have to go far away. You have to have deep, you have to go down to the ground. You have to have all the pipes. It costs a lot of money. Is that really worse? That is the first thought I had on that.
It's clearly a drawback. You cannot put it, for instance, if you go to the Arabic Gulf,
where you don't have that much depth. To the Rhine River.
No, you wouldn't desalinate the Rhine. I have a scoop for you, Björn. That is not salty water. That is just...
It's not salty?
No, it's not salty.
Where's it coming from? But joke aside.
But you're right. So you have to have some depth, which is what's interesting for you. For instance, in Norway, it's pretty fast. You're in the ocean, so really you're not in the Mediterranean Sea. You have a lot of depth available. There are some advantages as well to take that water there because you have less life, so less biofilm, less organic pollution, which means also that the water is already purer even if you are still with a lot of salts. So you need to desalinate, but you have less fouling of the membrane. So there's advantages and drawbacks, but clearly there's a difference between underground and undersea. Undersea, you're just dropping. Underground, you need to be digging.
But even there you have to fix it, right? I mean, you cannot just put it in somewhere into the.
Then you need to have a very good pipe supplier, and if you have a very good pipe supplier, then
do you know one?
Very good. I know a very good one, and we have a lot of cool references down on the bottom of the ocean. But that's a different story, and I don't want to make.
Hey, you signed the agreement that you are not allowed to say your company name here.
So I'm going to say it's GF Piping System, and look at our references. He pushed me to do it, so now I'm allowed to do it. So that was my number 3. Let's move to number 2. I forgot the name of the company, so let me cheat. But basically the technology is using waves. Their process is called WavetoO. It's just one of the companies I found in that field. But basically what they're doing is that they're saying, okay, what is a pump? I mean, if you already tried to pump up your tire on your bike, for instance, you have that pump and you're doing that. And if you're doing that, exactly the same, that a wave going up and down and up and down. So if you fix something on the bottom of the ocean, and on the top of the ocean you have something moving with the waves, then you're activating the pump, and you can be pumping the water to the reverse osmosis onshore. And there they claim to have smaller capacity. I don't want to say something fully wrong, but it's 6,000 or 12,000 cubic meters per day. And basically where they compete with that technology is not against the big plants producing a lot of water. It's really for decentralized desalination. So you're on an island or you're in a small property and you need to have water maybe part-time in the year, maybe really for a specific industrial application, then you would go for that solution. And they compare to a diesel-powered desalination. And what they say is that if you take their solution and you replace the diesel-powered one, it's like removing 1,050 cars from the road in terms of carbon emissions. So that's their promise. So they do this combination of onshore and offshore. You have other companies which do everything on the same stuff. So with the wave, they also produce the water, and then you have to collect the water on sea and to bring it back onshore. And that's something which is sponsored by the state of California. So you have different approaches, but basically leveraging the waves.
I have seen something similar. I think somewhere in the UK, and I talked to this guy, I think a year ago or 2 years ago. And this was not really for the decentralized approach. This was really for kind of centralized approach. So they had huge volumes. It was huge volumes. But the issue is, even there, it is so cost intensive going out there, having this kind of wave system that you get the energy out of there. I mean, in the end, you have to do the Mars, right? But let's say, even he was struggling with that idea, honestly saying. So, in principle, it sounds, in the first place, for me, cool. We're using the nature, Mother Nature, right? So we're using the Mother Nature to produce energy, right? So to help us to desal the water. But doesn't bring us this back a little bit to the question, isn't that all a kind of energy question? If it is a kind of energy question, maybe there are other ways to produce this kind of energy, right, as you try to explain, but there are other, let's say, preferences, call it this way, we have at the moment.
To your cost question, I think it's a matter of scale. I mean, if you look at desalination, the way it was done in the 80s with thermal desalination, then with the early reverse osmosis desalination, that was pretty expensive and used a lot of energy. And it went better and better and better. And nowadays we reach efficiencies that everybody would have called you sick and crazy if you had told that 20 years ago. But at some point, innovation plateaus, and there's the limit of thermodynamics. So it's a matter of how much can they scale up their technology.
Okay, but in the end, is also you need to have to find the place, right, where you have the waves. I mean, the question is, how high must be the wave to get as much as possible energy out of that? So again, if you go somewhere close to the coast, the waves are pretty small, right? So that means you have to go far away where you have maybe waves up to 10 meters that you get a little bit the power.
I'm pretty sure you don't need 10 meters, but if someone from the WavetoO process or someone from the Californian one or the British company you mentioned, Björn, is watching this, please come to me. I'd be interested to go in depth with the technology because that sounds really appealing, and I'd like to have a good answer to all the questions Björn is raising. And that leads me to my number 1 in that top 3. And actually that number 1 is microbial desalination cells. So what it is a mix between microbial fuel cells and a membrane desalination. The way it works is that in a classical microbial fuel cell, you would have an anode and a cathode. And basically you have your wastewater which is flowing across the anode, and your bacteria live on the anode and they eat some of that organic matter. And when they eat that, they breathe electricity. So electrons are going over the membrane and protons are going over the wire, so you're creating a current between the anode and the cathode, and you could be collecting that energy. Why is it interesting? Because theoretically speaking, inside wastewater, you have 7 times the energy needed to treat wastewater. So if you have a perfect system, you could be using one of the times to treat it, and the 6 other times is just free energy, just because when we poop, it creates energy. So that's the kind of stuff we could be leveraging. So what they do with microbial desalination cells is that in between those anode and cathode streams, they put an additional layer where you have salty water which is flowing through. And when the salty water is flowing through, there's a difference of charge between the anode and the cathode, which is breaking down the salt. The salt, it's NaCl, and Na plus is going on one side and Cl minus is going on the other side, which means you are taking out the salt out of water and you're creating drinking water. The limitation to that is that today the technology is able to produce drinking water out of brackish water, not out of salty water, so not of seawater. You could use it as a pre-treatment for salty water, so seawater, to turn it into brackish water, which then leads less reverse osmosis to be treated as drinking water.
Why is it not going directly to the seawater? Why doesn't it work? What is the limitation?
Because of the concentration. Actually,
is the concentration too high that it works?
Right now, if you look at the microbial fuel cell companies out there, so the pure players, most of the time they say they can be energy neutral and slightly positive. So actually, this slightly positive is the full question, because the more positive you are, the bigger the difference in charge. And if the difference in charge gets bigger, then you can attract more Na plus and Cl minus, and then you can desalinate more water.
True. I mean, I have seen these kind of technologies, and I'm a totally layman in that, totally, honestly, because I couldn't find the angle to understand that. I'm an environmental engineer, and I had the feeling that I need to study electrical engineering to get the entire system. So, and my question here is, I mean, this is not really new, right? This is not 100% new, because these kind of anode cathode thing, I mean, we know since many years, and even that we can treat wastewater with that, even that is known since decades, right?
Yes.
But we haven't really reached the point where this is a kind of breakthrough technology.
Okay.
And the question isn't that a little bit too complicated? I mean, you have to explain that to a municipality here, right? You have to have the people who can operate this. Because right now, it's a physical plant, a chemical physical plant, right? We know what to do, we know this since decades. If this comes in, does these people who operate this wastewater treatment plant, does they have to learn something totally new?
There's a lot of stuff in what you said. First, let me remind you the timelines of innovation in the water industry. Yes, it's around for a while, but innovation needs to be around for a decade in academia to start have an application.
But even if they stay for 10 or 20 years, I know the study you are mentioning at the moment, that doesn't mean that they are successful.
No. So what I'm saying is that you need to have an alignment of planets. If the iPhone comes out, it's not because Steve Jobs is a genius. It's that at a certain point in time, some kind of innovation meets some other kind of innovation, means the downsizing of the chips meets, and when you have that sweet spot, then you're creating innovation. And when you're discussing with those companies which are out there, what they say is that nowadays, the technologies in the anode, the technologies in the cathode, in the membrane in between, have made a leapfrog, which means that nowadays we could reach that beginning of the era. But that's, you need a crystal ball. To your question about the operation, it's pretty funny you mentioned the plant behind us, because the plant behind us is an MBBR. So it is anoxic. So basically, in terms of operation, it's not that different.
It's a biological plant, right?
Yes.
So that means
a microbial fuel cell is biological as well.
And but there you need a cathode, you need an anode, you need to understand the entire process. Here you have wastewater, it's a biological, and then you put some chips into that.
That's
and then
where I disagree with you, because actually you don't need to understand it, because
but you have to operate.
You can monitor the current, and actually with the current between the anode and the cathode, you have a very, very clear and detailed view of the state of the thing. You can do preventive maintenance. Those bacteria can send you calendar invite. I know a company doing that. I'll put the link in the comments, where they put you a calendar invite if the bacteria is upset. How cool is that? I mean, you don't need to be present on site.
How many emails I get? From all the bacteria which are in, or get I just one email if they all say, well, we are saturated?
If they notice that there's a shift in quality or that something is going wrong in what they do, you will see a shift in the current, which means basically you receive an email. That's just crazy. So in terms of operation,
but I don't want to
have
have an email. I want to have a machine behind that, which is operating then in the next step.
That's very interesting.
So I don't want to have anemia. Do you want to have anemia, guys? No, we don't want to have anemia.
Maybe we should be doing one day a show on digitalization and how we can go to the full automation. That is a spoiler.
That's true. But for me still I have seen many technologies over the last years, and my feeling is that they're all pretty complex. Complex to understand. I mean, you need someone who's putting the money on the table and saying, well, that's a technology I want to have. But he needs to understand the technology, and then he needs to have people who can implement the technology. Then you need people who can operate the technology, and that's more and more a challenge because there's so many things coming out there, and I don't get it anymore.
I don't disagree with that, but you mentioned that I would be referring to Paul O'Callaghan's study about the timelines of the dynamics of water innovation. What's interesting in his study is that he shows that actually it's not like innovation grows, and it's pretty cool, and then it's in the middle of the market. It's not the way it works. You have innovators, which are the first 1%, which take it, and those guys have a sound understanding.
But even
then you have the early adopters, then you have the early majority.
Okay, but even there's a big gap where you can fall in, and then you die with your technology and with your company.
Yes, I'm just saying. Those 3 technologies sounded to me like interesting.
Okay. Let me ask one final question. How many references are out there right now with that?
So with the microbial desalination cell, there's a couple of ones, small scale, and Aqualia is currently scaling up some of these approaches. And when you discuss with the microbial fuel cell companies, what they say is that where they see the future is that their own references might be the reference of the future for desalination, because they could be building the Lego bricks, and then desalination companies would be doing the rest.
Okay,
for the wave ones, there's much more references already out there.
Okay, but again, I mean, we are talking about desalination, but desalination for me is all about energy. It's all about energy. So the question is, do we have an energy problem?
We have an energy problem, absolutely.
So exactly. So if we solve the energy problem, then we could take the classical reverse osmosis.
But why would you do that? I mean, you could be just having something more efficient on all the levels.
Let's say maybe the municipality is able to, with the solar panels on the roof, to get all the electricity, because they are more efficient as right now. And then we can operate the reverse osmosis system with that.
Even the most efficient solar panel has an availability of 60-70%,
like this.
And it doesn't
have
that
but I'm not saying about now, I'm saying about future. If you solve the energy problem.
Availability is still going to be something.
The question really isn't, should we work always on the technology to make the technology more efficient, coming with something new nobody understands anymore? Or shouldn't we go to the big elephant in the room?
When Björn doesn't understand something, then nobody understands it.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, well, shouldn't we go to the big problem, to the big elephant in the room and say, well, it's an energy problem, so we need energy. That's all what we need.
The microbial desalination cell, what they say is that they can desalinate 1 cubic meter of water for 0.5 kilowatt hour of energy. 0.5.
Okay.
How many do you need with the best in class desalination out there in the traditional reverse osmosis?
I don't have the number in my head, but I know it's more. I
would say there's a 3 factor, but
yeah. I was thinking 3.5 to 4.
No, I wouldn't say 3.5. I think it's about 0.5 to 1.5 to 2 for the best case. So it would be 3 times more or 4 times more.
But average is somehow, I think,
probably.
Yeah, but
anyway, that's the promise.
Yeah, sure.
So you're right.
But even then, even if you need just 0.5 in energy, where does the energy come from? So, and if we solve the energy, if we have tremendously amount of energy and nobody cares anymore, then we could go back to the standard one.
You will never have tremendous amounts of energy and nobody cares from it. No, that's just unrealistic. That's totally out of this world. What I'm saying is that in the wastewater there's 7 times the energy needed to treat it, and by other studies it's 10 times the energy needed to treat it. And what do? We spend additional 100% to destroy that energy. We spend energy to destroy the energy. That's what I found appealing in that technology in particular. It is that it is addressing
but anyway, I heard that you agree it's an energy problem.
It is an energy problem.
It's an energy problem.
Yeah.
So if we create more energy, then we can solve this issue.
I think, Björn, you're just beating an open door. The water energy nexus is known, and it's the same topic all the time. If you have unlimited amount of energy, then you can even distillate your water if you want. I mean, everything's possible.
Fully agree with that. But let's say we are the water industry, but let's say from the global perspective, I mean, we are not the only one who need more energy, right? Or at least we are going down with our technology that they consume less. the entire world, everything, all science are working on this big problem, where to get the energy if the oil is gone. Solar, wind, whatever,
Okay.
right? So if we could find a way to solve that, wouldn't we think about microbial fuel cells if we could use a classic aero treatment system? If we would have
Okay,
enough
that is
energy.
another debate. I think you're wrong with the magnitude and of the scale of what you're discussing. But I think if we go too deep in that sidetrack, we did another show. So maybe take a mental note, and for you watching that, if you really want us to fight over that, because you see we disagree on that, then tell us in the comments.
No, I'm not saying that I disagree. All I'm saying is it is an energy problem.
The guy feels it's wrong.
No, I'm not feels it's wrong. But it's an energy problem, and we are going down with our technologies to reduce more and more. But the question is really, is that the right leverage to get this done?
That was my top 3 for this month. I forgot a lot of technologies which would be even more interesting maybe in desalination. So if you have more, if you want to enrich the discussion, please feel free to use the comment section for that. And we will switch to our deep dive for today, which is around micropollutants.
Oh, really? Cool.
So it's time for the deep dive, and the deep dive is going to be about micropollutants. But just before we mention, we have a sponsor for our show, and Björn, that is Everdrop.
It's Everdrop from beautiful Zurich, Switzerland. Have you ever been there? Beautiful, beautiful place, better than other places. Anyway, Everdrop I wanted to introduce is, they have the claim we are water, perfect water treatment for every need. And what they do is they produce innovative filtration technologies for end users as well for commercial industries. So, and they use some kind of amino acids as well as carbon fibers to remove calcium, as well to remove micropollutants or bacteria. That's all what they do, right? So and they have some patents on their technologies, pretty interesting. But what me personally triggers on that company, Everdrop, is first of all, is the story of the founder, which is Fabio Hüter. I think we should invite him soon. And the other thing is, where do you can find, especially in Switzerland, all these kind of filtration technologies? I checked it out, this Swiss Space Center. Okay, it's not NASA, but it's a Swiss Space Center. Even they use this filtration technology to grow food for space. The entire Swiss railroad is using this kind of filtration system to produce the water. Professional sport clubs like First League soccer teams, hockey teams, tennis clubs, and all the others, they are using that for their professional athletes. And even more, they have founded the Ubuntu Foundation, which is based on the Ubuntu African way of life. Have you ever heard about that? I was expecting you said no. You haven't ever heard about that.
I heard of it because I interviewed Fabio, so that's a cheat.
The Ubuntu way of life, just to give you an example for that, is really about I am because you are. It's really about respect. It's about being together, about appreciation, being a community, something like this. And there's also a very cool example. Doc Rivers, from the head coach from the 76ers NBA, he won with this concept some years ago with the Celtics from Boston an NBA championship. But that's a different story. I want to come back to Everdrop. And they, with this foundation, they support a project to produce, or let's say to bring clean water to people which they don't have clean water. They bring education, and also they support other environmental projects. So, and the reason why Everdrop said, hey, we want to be part of the show is they have meanwhile 30,000 installations here in Switzerland, so they are pretty well known. And they want to expand to Europe, to all the other countries, which are really beautiful. And they want to expand there, and they are looking for partners. So that means if you think you could be a potential partner, either by your person or with your company, you should definitely check out the webpage after the show, and you should reach out to Fabio. He's awaiting your call. So thanks again, Fabio and Everdrop, being our partner today.
And that leads us to our deep dive, which has something to do with Switzerland as well. Actually, micropollutants is a topic which is in the news for almost a decade, which is kind of crazy.
Longer.
In the real big news, maybe longer, you're right, maybe longer. And actually, micropollutants was our very first water show. So why do we come back to micropollutants again? Well, a couple of weeks ago, there was the Micropol Ecohazard Conference. And Micropol Ecohazard Conference is a conference happening every year when there's not COVID. And I happened to, having been a speaker at that conference in Singapore in 2015, so 7 years ago. So I was pretty curious to look at the proceedings of the 2022 conference. And what I found out is that there was nothing which I would call really new about what was presented there and discussed there. And everybody going to the conference said they were so happy, it was so much of a huge and wonderful conference. So I'm wondering, what's so appealing in the fact that we repeat research and we don't do much on the big scale?
There's one thing, maybe you haven't recognized that, but in the end, after 10 years, even after our discussion, it is clear that activated carbon has won the game. And I tell you why. It is not about my personal opinion. Well, it is about my personal opinion, but let's say I prove that. In Baden-Württemberg, as you know, which is the other side of the Rhine, there we have most of all the wastewater treatment plants which have something installed to treat the micropollutants, right? You agree? And this was somehow with Switzerland, which is on this side, somehow the forerunner, right? Switzerland was about 50-50. Clearly, Germany, all the first 35 installations.
Not Germany, Baden-Württemberg.
Baden-Württemberg, okay, call it Baden-Württemberg, but forget the rest of Germany.
There's Nordrhein-Westfalen, which does exactly the same but with a zone.
Forget it. And all the 35 here in Baden-Württemberg, they are somehow equipped 30 to 5 activated carbon to a zone. But the interesting fact is, there are another 30, 40 coming right now, which are now in planning, in engineering stage, in commissioning stage. By the way, the biggest one with 1.2 million inhabitants, which is Stuttgart. Guess what the technology is they have used? Activated carbon, or they will use activated carbon.
But actually,
so they invested, give me that point, they invested 82 millions, right, to implement now the powder activated carbon into their biological system. And they will be ready.
Powder activated carbon.
They will be ready 2028, so, everything will be ready.
So the most stupid activated carbon. Oh, interesting. No, actually, I don't want to open that sidetrack.
Please reach out to this person.
I don't want to open that sidetrack because it's not.
But
that's somehow, carbon versus ozone.
For me, that is somehow new due to the fact that it has changed, right? I mean, 10 years ago, or let's say 5 years ago, it was not really clear. Is it a zone which goes more the forerunner, or is it activated carbon? For me, if I see the shirts, if I see the project which are come up, it is clear that the decision is made.
Despite everything you say, it's still not clear, but that's not the point. Again,
it is not my opinion.
We had a full show over that, so I don't want to do that again. My point here today is what you say goes even into my direction. If it's clear that it's activated carbon as you claim it, then why do we still have micropollutants at conferences where we investigate several other solutions? Because already 7 years ago,
I agree with you.
I was presenting a paper on advanced oxidation processes, and the conclusion was, yes, it works. And yes, it works even better than ozone and even better than activated carbon, but it's going to be more expensive. And the conclusion for everyone was, yeah, come on. Before we couldn't even detect micropollutants. So we are in Switzerland, or we are in Germany, or in the places of Sweden, a bit of Benelux, a bit of France, where we start treating a bit those micropollutants. Maybe 95% elimination is good enough. And if that's still the threshold, what are we still looking for in terms of investigation and research?
Okay, let's say you have to look from two perspectives on that. I mean, the Micropol Center, which is somewhere over there in Baden-Württemberg, I checked all their research projects.
You do know there's a word outside of Baden-Württemberg. You get that?
Which one?
I mean, there's not just Baden-Württemberg. There's other countries, there are other places. The word is not just Germany.
Okay. But I just maybe I wanted to make it more easier for you that even you understand that. Baden-Württemberg is still over there, right? So no, but all I'm saying is that this competence center, I checked all the research they are doing, and the research they are doing is just based on activated carbon. So they stopped having research program with other technologies. For instance, there's a membrane lobby in Germany, not only in Baden-Württemberg, in entire Germany, and they are still pushing their membranes, flat sheets, UF, things like that. Even with that, you can treat that. Yes, it's right. But the competence center in Switzerland as well, in Bern, they stopped that. The research from Baden-Württemberg, this competence center, is just researching for activated carbon and a little bit for powder.
Yeah, but
for ozone. Sorry.
Still,
I
firmly believe you're missing the point, Björn.
But there are
because
no
you're
other
saying
technologies.
Baden-Württemberg, there are other technologies. every single
to
region
listen.
is looking at something different. Maybe Baden-Württemberg is looking at activated carbon. Go to the Airwag in Switzerland. They have 800 researchers inside Airwag.
but you
They do
cannot
research on
compare that.
membranes. They do
It's
research
a
on
research institute,
biofilms.
But
they do
but
research
the
on
competence
No,
center
it's
in
not-
Baden-Württemberg is just for
It's not a
micropollutants.
research
Airwag
center.
is for
Airwag
everything.
is exactly the same. It's the authority in Switzerland when it comes to scientific points and
No,
like
no.
removal of micropollutants.
No, for the
BAFU,
micropole is a
Bundesamt für
micropole.
Umwelt, which is
a micropole in Switzerland.
Micropole belongs to Airwag. It's inside the Airwag. The office is
Yeah, but
inside the
Airwag
Airwag.
is doing
And
different things. Airwag is for the
you're
entire water.
sidetracking the conversation.
No, I'm not doing
You're
that.
fully sidetracking. It's not about that. It's about every single place in this world believes that their water is a special snowflake. And that special snowflake needs a special treatment. And I do believe that's wrong. If we say micropollutants is something we want to fight and we want to remove, then take whatever works and do it. And if it's activated carbon, so be it. I couldn't care less.
All I'm saying is we should stop going into other technologies. That's what I'm saying. And for instance, the competence centers, they are doing that, right? And it's starting raining now. We started really with more than 30 degrees and now it is raining. That is also the beautifulness if we have a show.
That conversation is not over. We will take it just in 1 second. You won't see anything at a different place.
Yes.
Stay with us.
Okay.
So we got caught by the rain, but the rain is gone on the other side of the Rhine. So let's take the discussion where we had it. What you're saying is that activated carbon will wipe everything else out and let the researcher play along if they want.
No, I'm not saying activated carbon, but let's say what we can see, and that's obvious, that there are two technologies which won the game, right? And the question is, why are we still burning resources, money, and other things to find another way to treat micropollutants?
So what you're saying is that basically...
I mean, it's the same. Wait.
You play to disagree with me, to finally agree with me.
No. All I'm saying is we should accept, or let's say other way around, because you came with a conference. What are the news from the conference? Why is that so hyped? Because nothing is new. Other than that let's say the decision is made.
Yeah, but that's my full point, is that people attending that conference were very happy about the outcomes, and we're seeing like business outcomes and benefits and everything. And
Okay.
I feel that they will have
I get it.
a bad surprise.
I get it, but maybe that's the same point as I had with my editorial. They all went there and they all agree that micropollutants, to treat micropollutants, is a good thing. The same as we did 7, 10, 15 years ago. So there was nothing new, but there was maybe a cool, interesting event. They all came together after COVID and they said, well, it's somehow cool. But let's say in terms of technology, in terms of innovation for treating micropollutants, wow, there's nothing new.
There is things
What?
which are new. I mean,
Okay.
if you look at, for instance, what Oxyle is doing in Switzerland with this catalytic oxidation, it is new.
Yeah, but why?
But
But again, I'm back to my question. Let's say if we have these two proven technologies, it's the same. Copy that. Go to the sludge market in Germany. The same is the same, right? There are so many technologies to treat the sludge, to get the phosphorus out, and so on and so on. But you know, the game is over. Incineration will be the #1 player. It's the same as micropollutants. The same as the micropollutants. It will be either activated carbon or ozone. Full stop. Period.
Unless,
and that's why I'm
unless
asking.
activated carbon, because you say activated carbon, but powder is winning, which
That doesn't matter whether it's granulated activated carbon or it's
matters.
powder.
It matters, Björn, because if you would
No,
say
but
it
it's
is
the same,
granular
but
activated
it's
carbon,
the
I would
same.
agree that it can kill the others.
It
but
is
powder,
the same.
one day someone will realize it's too expensive and too stupid to just throw activated carbon out there.
Okay, but then you have research inside the technology, but you don't have other technologies. I mean, what does cost more? Finding different technologies, investing into new pilots and things like that, or let's say, having the optimum from one technology. It's the same as the ozone. You can play with the concentration. Maybe we can produce ozone in a different way. All the same, but then you have to research in the same technology. That's what I'm saying.
We have to zoom out.
Okay.
If we zoom out, I believe that there's another explanation which is possible. Why are we searching and searching and searching new things? Because actually we don't want to do it. If you want to do it, you just take something and you do it.
The explanation is clearly why we are all scientists. And the nature of a scientist is the same with the discussion we had with desalination. Why are we going further? Why are we doing that? Is this also our nature as scientists to find always other better solutions, however we call better or other solutions?
But it's not about the scientist, it's about the decision makers. And the decision makers, they will have at some point to put some millions on the table and to do it.
True.
And as long as they can say, wait, have we explored all the paths? They don't need to put those millions on the table and they don't need to do it.
Yeah.
So to me, there are two questions. Number one question is, do we need to treat micropollutants? Because maybe you can say, I can hear the argument where you say, why do we treat micropollutants? Why not microplastics? Why not PFAS? Why not 1,4-dioxane or whatever is out there?
That's the next step, the next thing, right?
So I can hear that argument, but then it has to be clear that we say, okay, forget the micropollutants, we need to have a holistic solution that treats everything and then we invest in that one. But that's a bit always like we're fluing in the future and hoping that the future is bright.
But even that, I said in one of our shows, why do we not have one place, or let's say one technology, which can treat all the contaminants we have on our wastewater?
Yeah, that would be called reverse osmosis.
Well, then we have again the energy issue. So we will.
Or supercritical water oxidation, or I mean, there
are technologies which can, let's say, handle 90% of all the contaminants. The question is, I mean, why we need a big gun if we have just a small bird, right?
Then it goes to water fit for purpose, and it goes to how much do we allow the nature to take on and to do itself.
But the question I have, especially for micropollutants, is always, I mean, I had this 10 years back as well. I mean, we are now seeing micropollutants, and now we are looking for finding a solution. What if in 20 years, in 30 years, in 50 years, we can look even further and then we find different things and everything what we invested is gone?
Yeah, but then 20 years, 30 years, it's anyways the timeline of an investment when you're doing an infrastructure job. So anyways, even if you're treating micropollutant and in 30 years you don't find anything new, you will still have to renew your micropollutant treatment plant.
Yeah, but why not? I mean, if you go to nano, if the next thing is coming is, what is that? Is I don't know, but the substances which are in there, they are becoming smaller and smaller. You know that from the ozone perspective, right? With the metabolites, right? Even in the water. The question is, how deep can we look into the water to really say, well, this is what we know? If you say the metabolites, right? We know that we produce metabolites with ozone, but we can't identify them because they are too small.
You're coming
so
back.
So what if we are going to that level in 10 years, 15 years now and saying, well,
we
will definitely. So
look at microelectronics. We look at parts per quadrillion.
But you asked the question, should we invest now into the micropollutants treatment?
I asked, what do we allow? Because in the past, if it was floating, then you could see it, so we put regulations to remove everything which was floating. Then we found out we can measure things which are dissolved, and then we decided we need to remove those as well. And then we found that we can measure micropollutants, then we thought we need to remove micropollutants. And now we see that we can measure parts per quadrillion, so basically we can measure one thing inside a full area, and still, do we need to remove everything? I don't pretend to have the answer to that question. I'm just saying that that is the question we have to answer as an industry instead of just bragging that we had a cool conference and for what?
Yeah, but the question is really what is new in terms of the micropollutant? What has really changed over the last years? Other than that we have more and more plants running with activated carbon or ozone here in the German-speaking area. What is new? So, and I think from my perspective, I haven't seen any really new.
So the conclusion is, nothing new, and we agree. So Björn, all of that just to agree.
Yeah, but let's say at least it was a lively discussion. I'm not always agree with you, right? But let's say we have to find the point. That is
very clear.
We have to hear.
Okay. So I think that's the right point for us to conclude for today.
We are a little bit wetted, right? We started in the morning. We were wetted too because we had 35 degrees. Now we are wetted 2 hours later. But due to other things.
For a different reason.
That's why I said France, be careful if you go to France.
He's blaming it on France again. So I hope you enjoyed having that a bit different show as much as we enjoyed doing it. It was a pleasure to be with you today again. And we're looking forward to meet you physically because we will be at different conferences in the next weeks.
Exactly.
So maybe we get a chance to have that live exchange. Björn, it was a pleasure to have you in France, even if you hate the country, we got it.
No, I've never said that I hate it. I never said that. But I'm saying, well, maybe next time we should find another place which is more beautiful with less rain. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching us. Thanks everybody for listening to us. As Antoine said, we will be physically very soon. And we will meet very soon also.
See you next time.
See you.